Hello? 2 tickets for Guilty Gear XX, please.
Oh, hello. 2 tickets for Guilty Gear Strive, please. Let's crack some freaking eggs! As of today, the second season pass for Guilty Gear Strive has been released, and the first character is dropped. Until today, our interest for the game has been quite muted because of our 3 favorite characters, our top one was not in the game. This character was so important to us, we immediately prioritized getting the game within minutes of seeing the announcement, despite not touching Strive pretty much at all since release. Because of the heavy monetization of mainstream fighting games at large, we are generally wary of getting into any because to keep up with the meta or even just to learn how to counter the new characters, you kinda are required to buy the DLC characters. So, we tend to not get into most fighters anymore, even though we grew up loving them. Skullgirls and Dim's Fighting Herds are the exceptions, and their rosters are quite small and don't have a dozen entries to pull from for DLC. Character DLC is normal in the industry now, and it kinda reminds me of having action figures marketed to us from our favorite cartoons. Can't have an incomplete set of Ninja Turtles or Power Rangers. But I guess if you can't afford it, there's always just getting your favorite one. And honestly, that's how it starts. Once a game gets you to make one extra purchase, you're much more likely to buy more. It's pretty basic consumer psychology, and me calling it out doesn't mean it doesn't work on me. Quite the contrary. But we do try to resist it because our brain is susceptible to that sort of marketing. What I'm saying is capitalism is poop. But my point is, even knowing how insidious this is, we knew one character would make Strive worth it, and we dove right in. And it's not just because of nostalgia or even that she's our main, it's because our identity was influenced by this character and her return is a historical moment for trans representation inside of video games. However, the fighting game community has been much more queer inclusive as of late, even inside of Guilty Gear fandom.
I'd say it's time for a tea break.
So, Bridget was a character in Guilty Gear dating back to 2006, when we would have been about 14, around the same age as Bridget was assumed to be in her first appearance, or at least between 12 and 14. Bridget has been a trans icon for some, but to be honest, it's quite complicated. If nothing else, she's been an icon for queer and gender non-conforming people alike. The unique backstory of being forced to live as a girl under the threat of death nowadays would actually pander to right-wing sentiments of cis kids forced to live as a gender that's not their own. However, there is actually plenty of lived experience we and other trans people, not just femmes, have in common with Bridget. The threat of death or bodily harm if people found out what you were assigned at birth. It's a spin on the general transphere of transphobic violence. Moreover, the goal of Bridget until Strive has been to be manly, to chase masculinity for the sake of proving wrong her hometown's superstition that having a family in town with all-boy twins would make everyone have bad luck. This superstition was so prevalent that Bridget was forced by her parents to live as a girl so she could avoid being killed or exiled. This was a defining part of her character, and what many fans cited as why Bridget could never be trans. Hell, she even wore a headband that had the male gender symbol on it. A lot of her character was defined as proving herself a man. Within lore, calling Bridget a boy had plenty of validity. Growing up, we didn't even think about it so hard because we didn't even know trans was a thing, so we didn't have a lot of tension about it. Although, considering Bridget was very loud about being a boy actually, this gave us another crisis. If Bridget was a boy, then we were gay. There were no ands, ifs, or buts about it. There's always been a comedic irony in Bridget's character. It's very common in anime media to have a young girl who's super moe and can kick ass. But this subversion, oh, this cute girl is actually a cute boy, was something that maybe at the time seemed interesting and new to cis audiences, but honestly, it was something that became more and more common in anime, and influenced the still damaging meme and subculture of being a trap. As in, a boy who's so good at cross-dressing that he can trap you into being attracted to him, even though you're supposed to be straight. Although Bridget was, for many trans people, goals, including us, there was some inherent transphobia in how the game chose to portray her in the pursuit of making her fit into a trap paradigm. In fact, her talking sprite in the older games makes her face much more stereotypically masculine, leaning into a shock value trope, because this face does not look like this sprite. It could easily be seen as a reflection of the thing a lot of people say about trans people and traps alike, that I can always tell. The more square jaw character portrait is kinda like getting a closer look and now being able to tell that she's not a girl. When we revisited the older games last year because we just really want to get our Bridget fix, it really hurt to see this character portrait. Bridget's legacy until now has been at least in part damaging to the trans community because of the prevailing attitude that trans people, especially trans femmes, were trying to trick cis people into sleeping with them, or just being attracted to them in general. This attitude not only makes trans people out to be tricksters and predators, but has given many who kill trans people an excuse to hurt and kill trans people and get away with it. The gay and trans panic defense was and still is a problem, though some places have banned it as a possible defense, which is progress. However, passing culture and trans panic has left its mark and made a lot of trans people feel that if they cannot pass, they should be closeted and not say that they're trans at all if they don't want to face transphobic violence. And if they do pass, that it's much safer living stealth in order to not be killed by someone who finds themselves attracted to them. Hell, it even hurts cis straight men because many who are attracted to trans women often face homophobia from people in their lives who invalidate trans identities, and in so doing, label the cis guy gay. Some people who've hurt people because of trans panic, or claim trans panic, were encouraged to do so by friends and family who did not accept the trans person's gender that the cis guy had relations with, sometimes even giving them an ultimatum. Because Bridget could have been considered cis before now, her existence was very complicated for many fans of the character archetype. Within anime fandom, a lot of femboy and otakonoko enjoyers have flocked to the characters, and it seems Bridget is now in the camp of characters like Astolphos from the Fate series and Ferris from ReZero, of which trans fans have to assert that these characters count as trans representation, even if at first they were intended to be feminine boys or men, and not trans women, or non-binaries. Ferris and now Bridget are confirmed in universe to be trans, but Bridget's gender revisiting is much more satisfying in my opinion, because Ferris's gender was confirmed in a supplementary material for her work. The first order of business in the morning was to address the reflection in the mirror. Cute! I am cute! A girlish young woman. A wonderful and cute girl. For quite a long time now, this had been the mantra. The words repeated like magic. No, not like magic, they were magic. For all intents and purposes, a magic spell was simply words that contained the power to change things, to affect the way the world worked. A vow to oneself that brought about change could be called nothing less. Affirmed, the picture of the ideal woman was now complete, striking a pose in front of the mirror, then checking once more to be sure nothing was out of place. No detail could be overlooked. There could be no mistakes. This girlishness was borrowed, though it ought to have belonged to this person to begin with, so it was important to treat it carefully. Okay, looking good today. Again. And hi, with some very troubling news. This was supposed to just move on and go to the rest of the essay talking about why I think Bridget's representation as a trans character is better than Ferris's, and I was just using the popular quotes from the light novel that people quote as proof that Ferris is trans. However, I think that a lot of people believing that Ferris is not trans is not rampant transphobia, given the way that this light novel actually frames Ferris's feminineness. These are quotes from this light novel, but if you look at almost anything else, and I have only been skimming the light novel for like 20 minutes trying to look at Ferris's parts and see how they represent her, from a trans perspective is highly problematic because, as we'll go into later in this essay, it goes headfirst into transphobic assumptions about being a trap and defining someone's gender by their sets. I will read one such part. Trigger warning for transphobia. Could it be that the Viscount has feelings for Lady Tyrrhenia? What? At Ferris's blunt question, the Viscount started to turn red before their eyes. In a near panic, he turned to Tyrrhenia and said, It's not true. That fool's sick in the head. I don't care what about. I know, you don't have to get so frantic, but I can't believe you would use a word like fool for such a refined young lady. Apologize to her. In his vehement efforts to defend himself, Miziers accidentally let the cat out of the bag. A fool he is, and a fool I'll call him. Dress or no dress, that's a man. Huh? Tyrrhenia, shocked, looked at Ferris, trying to decide whether this was true. It might have been possible to go on deceiving her, of course, but if she set her mind to it, it wouldn't take long for her to find out the truth. It's true, ma'am. I'm a man. Just like you said. No point in denying it. Ferris pulled down the front of his dress to reveal his perfectly flat chest. Tyrrhenia still looked as if she could barely believe it. With no choice remaining, Ferris lifted up his skirt. Tyrrhenia was deeply shocked. But yes, I'm a man. But the part about His Highness and me being in love is true. We're in love, aren't we, Your Highness? Ferris had proven his sets, but continued to insist that the love itself was no lie. There is a conflict with how the book describes and presents Ferris's gender, and what it seems Ferris's gender is to them on the inside, and how they think of themselves. The book does not respect them. That being said, it is completely out of the context of this essay to really investigate this, and now I really want to investigate this. But that will also take me reading this entire fucking book, which I just do not have the time for right now. So in the future, I will do a deep dive on Ferris's gender. However, I want to say just a few things before moving on. No one, trans or cis, is obligated to show you their secondary sex characteristics to prove their sets one way or the other. Also, the book's constant focusing on sets and not gender, of course, makes me believe that there's more to Ferris's gender than what Ferris's sex would imply, even based on the framing of most of the book, and the fact that at no point, at least from what I read, does Ferris get she/her or assert she/her pronouns on anyone around. However, as a trans person, and having been around other trans people who fear this too, it is very common for people to not assert their gender or even believe their gender as valid because, well, if you live in a society that says that your gender is your sex, even if you're able to present yourself as a gender that is not your assigned gender, you have to kind of moonwalk uphill to even get yourself into a positive mind state about your own validity. So I'll still maintain that Ferris is trans, but it's complicated, and I think that in retrospect, Bridget's representation now in 2022 is even more relevant and powerful. Moving on! Bridget, in contrast, was confirmed in a mainline work, actually the current mainline work of her series. Flying unrestrained with yo-yo mastery, Bridget. Freeform tricky spinner. Bridget was born one of two twin sons of a multi-billionaire couple and was given only the best training and tutoring as a child. However, Bridget's upbringing was what one would expect for a daughter of a high society family instead of a son. There was a reason for this. Bridget's hometown had a superstitious belief that male twins brought misfortune. The townspeople were so embedded in this belief that they insisted the younger of any set of male twins was put to death or exiled from the town upon birth. Unable to swallow either of the options, the twins' parents raised Bridget as a daughter. While Bridget strove to put on a happy front, These efforts only seemed to cause Bridget's parents more pain. Bridget began to think that behaving like a man and bringing home a vast array of riches would prove that the superstition was unfounded. Although unsuccessful in capturing Dizzy for her bounty, Bridget showed talent as a bounty hunter and managed to bring home great wealth. This led to the village superstition fading, but it also left Bridget without a goal. Bridget now works as a bounty hunter while searching for a purpose. Not only that, but unlike characters like Astolphos and Ferris, being in a fighting game makes Bridget more of a main character than a side one. Many fans, trans, gay, and fetishizing, were waiting with bated breath for this announcement. Just her return in general, regardless of what form it took. And of course, the less trans-inclined fans tried to predict what would be a satisfying way for the character to make a return, noting that Bridget's intended goal would redefine her character completely if she achieved it, and alienate the original audience that appreciated her so much. One of Guilty Gear's most popular characters may be difficult to add to Strive due to story reasons. Arc System Works are notorious sticklers of their lore, so a simple retcon seems unlikely to be an option here. There are a ton of popular Guilty Gear characters still missing from the roster, so there's obviously an ample lineup to choose from. However, when looking back at Guilty Gear's history, there's actually one character in particular who remains incredibly popular, but might be difficult to add to the modern games due to their initial appeal likely clashing with their storyline. This character is none other than Guilty Gear XX's Bridget. To anyone with even the briefest passing familiarity with Guilty Gear, it no longer comes as any surprise that despite the name Bridget and quite a feminine demeanor, Bridget is actually a male character. A recurring theme throughout Bridget's interaction with other characters is that he doesn't enjoy being referred to as a girl or assumed to be female, and that their journey is largely about proving manhood and being accepted as a real man. The character even wears a headband sporting the male symbol. Despite their enduring popularity, Bridget never made an appearance in Guilty Gear XXRRY, even though Bridget beat characters who have since returned or made their playable debuts such as Baiken, Eiji Mito, and Raven. Bridget ended up in second place, just narrowly losing the top spot to Dizzy, who was later added for Guilty Gear XXRRY Reveler, with Baiken and Raven joining later. Eiji Mito will eventually be part of the launch roster for the upcoming Guilty Gear Strive. A key reason for this, I suspect, is the fact that due to the stated goal of Bridget, it's very difficult to bring a character like this back without alienating existing fans. Guilty Gear XXRRY takes place 6 years after Guilty Gear XX, which was Bridget's last appearance, meaning that at this point, Bridget would have to be a grown adult man. While it's never been a secret that Bridget was a male character, the feminine appearance and playful nature seems like it will be quite difficult to replicate naturally in an adult character whose entire journey in the series has been about proving masculinity. Anyone who's familiar with Arc System Works and the way they approach their fighting games knows that no matter how nonsensical the storylines in them may seem, they are taken very seriously both by developers and a lot of their players. Betraying the character motivations or timeline progression in order to preserve the childlike version of Bridget is simply not something we're likely ever going to see in this series. With Guilty Gear Strive taking place even later than Guilty Gear XXRRY, the issue has hardly resolved itself either. Bridget remains one of the most popular characters in the series, but also one of its most problematic ones simply because there doesn't seem to be any winning play where you can both show Bridget's character progression and keep the appeal that made Bridget popular to begin with. If they do include Bridget, I'd expect them to be a dashing young man, similar to Kai in appearance rather than a muscle-bound giant like Potemkin though. There are several different ways to express manliness after all. I'ma be real here, Bridget was fetishized in her previous appearances, and I would suspect that at least fans will continue to do so. She was very poised to appeal to lolicons. Not just because of the young femme moe presentation she had, but her literal style of dress. She's a yo-yoing combat nun, or at least dresses like one. We've wanted to cosplay as Bridget probably ever since we've known about the character because of her appearance and her love of toys that double as weapons. It's pretty neat. And it felt safe because if Bridget was canonically a boy, no one could logically punish us for dressing like a boy, right? Loopholes. If push came to shove, we just expected to get some weird looks and have to hear xenophobic comments about how Japanese gender sensibilities are all wonky. But like it or not, Bridget asserting herself as a boy until now did a lot for us. Hell, when we first started dressing femme, we started wearing an oversized shirt and spats, trying to look as much like Bridget as possible. It was a look, and gender normative binary influence sensibilities do push femmes to be comfortable being sexualized, and of course encourages them to sexualize themselves, especially at an early age, unfortunately. Although we didn't start transitioning until we were 22, when we first did, we dressed very kawaii. And the first time we ever did it was at an anime convention, and that was just to get our feet wet. But it meant we could get as high femme or cute as we wanted, without fear of being judged. It was very weird, retrospectively, to know that we felt very flattered when we found out boys were taking upskirt pictures of us without permission. Especially because we were wearing shimmy pan, and we were being so anime. Of course, being a little influenced our style of dress as well, and it's only retrospectively that we realized that the kidcore style of Bridget was as much the reason why we flocked to the character as much as the gender nonconformity. The article we quoted was concerned about if Bridget's return would keep intact the parts of the character that made her a fan favorite in the first place, and I think those things were preserved, although obviously not with the approach the writer was expecting, even if it was obvious to trans people that this will be the best way to go. Objectively, Bridget's most noteworthy qualities were preserved, not only the femme presentation, but also the childishness. Both the new and old Bridget hold a teddy bear, and uses it as a weapon. That's all we needed to also claim Bridget is little now, so there's also that. We're reminded of the recent stuffed animal discourse in regards to that, because many people were told growing up that they would grow out of stuffed animals. And in an adult culture revolt, many are asserting that as adults, they still love their stuffies. Fuck off. If you have a stuffed animal, you're not automatically a little. However, you do have something in common with a lot of littles. And middles. The transphobic assertion that some people like to make towards trans people, why can't you just be a feminine man or, alternatively, a masculine woman, is very harmful. However, in terms of gender experimentation, going into soft boy or femboy aesthetics, or tomboy or butch femme aesthetics, before moving into presenting as a totally different gender than you were originally expected to, has been very helpful for many people to ease themselves into their transition, or just experiment in general. It's weird to say this, but I'm glad Bridget wasn't originally trans. It did more for us for her not to be. Her time away from the franchise, approximately 6 years in-game since her last appearance, gave her time to grow, and it hits much more profoundly to see her living her truth. Not just because it reflects our gender journey of not fitting into harmful gender stereotypes and feeling like we had to overcompensate, but also at one point asserting that we're a cis boy. For us, or me at least, it turned out to be no, I'm actually a girl. However, we did have to do some soul searching, and that's incidentally why we don't apply born this way ideology across the board for automatic validity of gender or sexuality. You cannot change someone's gender or sexuality, but it can move and evolve over time. I'm a girl on purpose is what I'm saying, and Bridget is too. Seeing this reflection in Bridget's character hits so much harder. It's also why we think this incarnation of Bridget will break some trans eggs, because if you were a boy and you really like Bridget enough to ken her, her transness is bound to give you an identity crisis now. You're welcome. It says a lot that there were plenty of fans of Bridget who were very adamant about her being a boy, but also were not at all interested in seeing her achieve her goal of becoming more manly. Now they get that, and she gets to be self-actualized. Isn't that neat? I think it also speaks to the way gender normative expectations hurt us all, and that Gender Strive bio has an extra detail telling us that after succeeding as a bounty hunter and coming back to her home village with wealth to show that the curse was wrong, that she now has no goal and needs to find one. Setting your sights on a goal and not thinking ahead to the life you want to lead after you achieve it is kind of universal, but it also speaks to the trans experience of coming to the end of or a satisfying moment in your transition and not knowing what to do with yourself after, because you've had to fight for so long to have your gender seen as valid and to feel enough in your gender inside. It can have you feeling really weird, like, I'm a girl, now what? For Bridget, it speaks to the irony of her character. She was a boy that looked like and acted like a girl, whilst trying to be a man, and ended up realizing in the pursuit of being a man that she's actually a girl after all, but she can do anything a man can. This irony is embraced even now in a very earnest way. Bridget's character theme reads like a monologue from her character about her life, talking about her backwards hometown and how it still affects her and is even still a part of her. It's literally called The Town Inside Me. And it talks about being patient and driven in her goals and not having wanted to run away from her town in the first place. And on top of that, it's a cutesy girl power pop bop that fits her intensely and even resonates with trans girls in a very memey way too.
I never found out what it was. I hate the alarm clock I chose.
There is some cute pouting in it is what I'm saying. In fact, when I actually get the lyrics written down, I do want to do a full analysis of the song. I do it now, but I wouldn't finish this video anytime soon if I did. So yeah, that's my feelings about Bridget and her transness and how happy we are that she's finally made it. But I wrote this all before I ever touched her in game, so I wonder what her gameplay and story in Strive is like. So to prepare for this section, I played the old Guilty Gear XX and then Guilty Gear Strive so I could have a comparison to how Bridget was before and how Bridget is now. And moveset wise, she's kinda same old. I'm new to Strive, so there's a lot of stuff I don't know, but going from the old game to the new game felt very right. It's definitely the same character there. Cuteness and all. And she's really fast, very beginner friendly, and pretty strategic as well. So I really have no complaints. Story mode wise, I was actually really surprised. At first I was incredibly disappointed because I thought that actually she wasn't a girl.
Ready to give up yet?
That's all for today. You're a tough cookie. You see any other UMAs, you let me know. The lady.
I'm a boy.
That right? Sorry about that, horse.
See, the thing is, when you play Guilty Gear Strive, apparently there's two endings you can get for your arcade story mode. And if you're playing with Bridget, she does not assert that she is a girl if she loses to her first boss. If that's the case, you'll go down a path of being in conflict with your gender.
I sense great hesitance. Are you distressed, perhaps?
Distressed? It's more like I'm conflicted. I just don't know if I should keep living like this.
So you're afraid, then, of change. You're conflicted because you still cherish the present. Perhaps you should consider what is truly important to you.
You may be right. Thank you so much, Mr. Kai.
It doesn't feel like an alternate reality though. It feels like the journey that she's going on. If you get to the end and you feel dissatisfied, as I think you're supposed to because it reflects how Bridget even feels, and you go into arcade mode again and you win every fight the first time, don't lose any fights, then you get a very earned ending.
Stop right there. That's enough.
I don't know what to do. I'm not strong like you, Mr. Kai. I'm too scared of losing what I have.
Running away, huh? Ain't you a little young for a midlife crisis?
Of course I'm running. I'm happy the way I am.
Discretion can be the better part of valor. But think about it. For the sake of your future self.
For my future self. But what if I make the wrong decision?
You got your whole life ahead of you, kid. Gotta learn to take a hit sometime.
And there are helping hands right in front of you.
I don't want to run scared anymore. If I keep on faking it like this, I know I'll regret it. So from now on, no matter what, no more lying to myself. Thank you, both of you.
Don't mention it. Happy trails, cowgirl, or, cowboy.
Cowgirl is fine, because I'm a girl.
That actually makes me feel really good because I had to fight for it, just like I had to fight for my own gender. And I appreciate the game for not giving it to me easy. Of course, you can change the difficulty, but even playing on easy, these fights were much more difficult than I expected. Considering whenever Bridget loses to Kai, I think even outside of arcade mode, he says that Bridget can challenge him anytime she wants. Which, going between the still struggling with gender ending and the finally coming to her own peace ending, it feels like she listened to his words from the first ending and then came to a resolution in the second one. And with the added context of having beat everyone and making a name for herself like she's supposed to have done in her background, being a good bounty hunter means winning all your fights, I suppose. It just feels really right. And little narrative. Didn't expect that from a fighting game, gonna be honest. And with the caveat that you have to win all the fights, and all the fights when you are trying to not lose any are automatically harder, it was pretty stressed out. Especially considering, I'm trying to get this video done today. But aside from that, I was really happy with it. And Bridget's interactions with all the characters from her past were really cool. Though I am curious on what interactions she'll have with Dizzy, because she didn't talk to Dizzy at all. Dizzy is in this game, right? I don't have all the DLC, I just have Bridget. That all being said, I'm very, very satisfied with Guilty Gear Strive Bridget, but I know based on the fact that you have to sweep arcade mode to get her to say that she's a girl, that there will be a ton of people still misgendering her. Though, I feel less bad about it in this case, considering you play through her journey, and she's now in a new phase of her life, and I'm really interested to see where she goes from this game and beyond. Bridget's valid, and you're valid, alright? So, strive to be your best self, and, we'll see you next time. Oh wait, I forgot to read out the patron names. Guess I'll do it now. If you want to join these wonderful allies of the channel, go to patreon.com/fluffbyte, descriptions in the link in the thing. Thank you so much for continuing to support us. Voidwalker System, Nova System, Valued Customer, and R2 Walker. I literally worked on this for 8 or 9 hours straight. I forget what time is. Have a good night! Oh, and I go by Fantasiabyte now. Just to let you know. Still she, her pronouns. Fanta for short is still good.